Good morning, everyone. It's Yvonne here, and thank you so much for joining us today. Our newest Mayesh Design Star, Hafsa Lewis of Hafsa & Co., is my very special guest today. We are going to dive into her amazing dried floral arrangement, and then we are going to start learning a little bit about how she works with businesses and brands as a florist and answer any questions that you have live. That's one of my favorite parts of the show, if you don't know that already. While we get started, just say hello. Let us know where you are from. Sometimes we have people literally from all over the world, and we just love seeing that. Also, as always, if you have any questions at all, be sure you post them in the comments so that way we can answer them live. And also wanted to make sure that you guys know that after this show, if you can't stay for the whole thing, no problem. The replays will be available immediately on Facebook and YouTube. And then we'll be posting the video replay, a podcast version of the show, along with our show notes up on the blog. So that takes me about a day or two, but it will be there. Also want to remind you guys, if you're listening to a podcast or even the video, please leave us a comment. The podcast, if you can just give us some stars and a review, that would be amazing, and it just helps get the word out to everyone about our podcast. So with that said, let me bring on Hafsa. Hey girl, how are you?
Hi everyone. Hey Yvonne.
Welcome to Mornings with Mayesh. I'm so excited to have you here. We have been flower friends since way back when we went to Quito. So just so excited first to have you as a Mayesh Design Star. Congratulations. And to have you here on the show with us today. I'm so excited.
It's such an honor. Thank you to Mayesh for having me, and Design Star. I still can't quite wrap my head around that name, but so honored and so happy to be here.
Yes, I love it. So before we dig into everything, can you first introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about your flower story?
Yeah, so my name is Hafsa. I own Hafsa & Co., and we use flowers to help businesses stand out. So a very non-traditional sort of florist approach. I've been in the industry now just a couple of years. In fact, Mayesh Quito was sort of the beginning of my floral journey. So it's very near and dear to my heart. But yeah, I think when I started out, I knew I loved flowers, and I knew that I wanted to do something in the realm of flowers, but wasn't quite sure which route to go. So I was really thoughtful about what I didn't like as much as what I did. And, I've been in the events industry on the planning side for a long time, and had done some florals for weddings and things and events several years prior. But when I went out on my own to start this business, I really just decided that where I thrived and what I loved and what I was passionate about was oftentimes the big stuff. So large floral installations and working with brands and businesses, and helping them develop a true sort of floral identity, if you will. That's where I was like, yeah, I want to do that. How do I do that? And so I have, a background in clinical psychology, and I went to school for a really long time. And so I sort of approached flowers the same way that I approached school. And I set out to learn. And I started looking at the people in our industry who was doing the things that I really loved, like the big stuff, right? So, and the really unique stuff. So Sue McCleary,
right.
Wearables, and, Katie Davis, large, beautiful organic installs. And then I really just set out to learn from them by attending various workshops and in whatever way I could, or purchasing their, books or literature, and just learning and surrounding myself and immersing myself in that and those experiences. And I would say I probably spent a good 6 months doing that, which I understand, I was very fortunate at that time in my life. I was able to do that. Right. And that's sort of how the business, I think, and feels took off. I learned I was doing a lot of things wrong. And so learning, how to streamline mechanics and certain various tools and tips and tricks that, you just don't know until you know. I have a dear friend here in Boston. Her name is Chrissy, and she owns Boston Pollen, and she's like sort of known for the big like artistic floral installations, and she's been a huge mentor to me in learning. So like kind of picking their brains. I've been lucky enough to have people in my life who've let me, and I think that's partly why I'm so passionate about doing that now. So truly, that's in part how Hafsa & Co. was born, and how this idea of like using flowers to help businesses stand out kind of came from.
I love it. Yeah. So my next question, you kind of already answered, just, how did you decide for your business to focus on using flowers to help other businesses stand out? Was there anything about the other like pieces of the business, like regular retail or the weddings and events? That's a big, huge thing. Why you decided not to do those and really decided to focus on the business piece?
Yeah, it's funny. I get made fun of a lot here on Nantucket because there's like 150 weddings in like one weekend in the high months.
Yeah.
Money is there. The income is certainly there. But for me at the time in my life when I started Hafsa & Co., I just needed all of the things in my life that I was passionate about. And it wasn't that. It wasn't, wedding work. And I was really kind of maniacal almost about only taking the jobs to build the portfolio that I wanted. And again, very, very lucky in that respect, because yes, I had to say no to a lot, or I said no to a lot of, probably high paying wedding gigs here on the island, but I don't regret it. So that was my part of my decision tree was, do I want to spend my time, and, weddings take time, and trust me, like I still freelance for my friends all the time, and it's an industry, and I,
Right.
a lot of my dearest friends are wedding florists, but for me personally at that time in my life, I was just like, I just want creative freedom. I want, art really. And I think that's what I've found with what I do is that in working with businesses and brands, oftentimes they know kind of what they want, but part of the journey is really formulating that together. And
Right.
that's what I really, really love. And, and so that sort of kind of made it easier for me to decide.
Yes.
So that's how I ended up here in doing this.
Yeah. I love it. I love it just because it is so different. We don't see a lot of businesses who are solely focused on other business and floral marketing. And I think Anthony did a little bit, right? But he did the run of the gamut. He did, brand activations and things like that. He talked about that, but he does weddings and he does retail now. So he does a little bit of everything. So for you, you're definitely different than anyone else that we've ever had as a Mayesh Design Star. So it's just, or even on the show for that matter. So it's really exciting, I think, for everyone.
So cool.
Yeah. So you mentioned that you studied psychology in school, and I know just from our talks that you have a passion for mental health and obviously flowers. So how has that, can you talk a little bit about how that's shaped your business and kind of how you function?
Yeah, absolutely. I love talking about this now, not so much 3 years ago, but, I had a really traumatic personal life event that happened shortly actually after, after going to Mayesh Keto. I was married for a long time and it ended abruptly, and it just really shook my world. And I needed some time and space away from the sort of traditional therapies that weren't working for me. And I found that flowers were really like my therapy, and was thing that made me feel something. And, as somebody who spent 10 years studying behavior and the way that our brain processes grief and trauma, and, clinical psych and counseling psych, it's very hard not to self-diagnose, and it was very hard not to hover above, this thing that was happening in my life and not say, oh, okay, well, this is the anger stage, and this is the denial stage, and this is, whatever.
Yeah.
And I tell the story now because I think that it really humanizes so many people who I've learned, especially throughout COVID, like who have a small business or, everyone has a story, right? And this was just part of mine, but it was the thing that sort of pushed me into the world of flowers and made me stay there. And so having a background in clinical psychology is really just a testament to my love always for people and my passion for people and connecting people through their stories and through their life experiences. And that's so much of like what is important to me in my work is when I create something or design something, like I want you to feel something. And there's a quote that somebody shared with me, and I wish I could remember who it was, but and it basically, they said to me, all flowers grow through dirt. And that really became a mantra for my life and my business, because it was like, okay, like you go through this really dark place, but then you grow and something beautiful is born. So it was, 3 years outside of that horrible experience, it's beautiful. And I'm very passionate about supporting other, men, women, anyone who needs it or wants it, that I'm able to through just conversation and sharing with people that, like, yes, I am very happy and very proud of Hafsa & Co. But, really it came from a place of grief. It was born from a place of grief. So,
right.
There's a lot of motivation behind that, and sharing strength through each other's stories it's important to me.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. And we have a comment here on Instagram. It just says, love your story. And so, yeah, your story is truly inspiring. So thank you for sharing that, Hafsa.
Thank you.
You also talked a little bit about, you didn't go to the traditional educational route to become a florist. You're a self-taught designer, and you mentioned some of the things that you did, but can you describe your journey so far and tell us what might be next in your educational growth that you might have planned?
Yes. Well, firstly, I just have to want to, shout out to all my floral mentors, Mayesh included, because, and sort of tying it back into the mental health part of my life, there's this thing that we all experience at some point in our life. It's imposter syndrome, right? So it's like, I'm here, I'm doing it, but like, should I, and am I good enough? And can I? And that was absolutely me, and still is now, through this process of learning. To me, I just knew that when I started, like, flowers, nature, like that in and of itself was a therapy. And in the beginning, I'm like, I don't know, this looks good to me, but I don't really know. So the learning for me initially took part, I traveled to Mexico with Chrissy, who I was telling you about, and just really travel and culture and immersing yourself in different environments and beauty and getting inspired by that was probably the first thing that I needed, both personally and I think professionally. And then shortly after that was keto. And, you form a lot of Ecuador. Sorry, for those who don't know, it was a week-long Mayesh hosted workshop in Ecuador. And I was like, wait a second, flowers, travel, like this is right up my alley.
Yes.
It was an investment, and
it was.
Yeah, absolutely. And I endorse that investment, like wholeheartedly, tell people all the time, like, spend the money, take the trip, you won't regret it. I certainly didn't. And I think, because there's just no substitution for being completely surrounded and immersed by the one thing that connects you to every single person that's there.
Yes.
And that is true of, any floral workshop or class, that I've taken or done or tried. And I just learned so much. Even like I learned so much even from the wedding florists that were there about color stories and color theory and, different various mechanics, like Sue's chicken wire burrito is the basis of every large scale installation I do. So
including the video that you just did. Yes. Exactly. For anyone that hasn't watched it yet.
Yeah, exactly. And it's invaluable time and information. And so that for me I'm a hands-on person. I need to see to learn. It was even true back when I was in school for psychology, like connecting and learning through other people. So that was sort of like the initial phase. And then the second phase, right, is like actually doing it, is really having the wherewithal to say, okay, like now I kind of know how to do these things. Like I've done a couple of these things. now I'm going to like do it, whether it's I'm just going to pay for it myself and do it, or find someone who thinks I can do it that will pay for it, and create a portfolio and start to generate the things that I want to do more of. And I live in a very small community, and I feel very blessed in that regard because, you know, I had a lot of support and a lot of people that were like, okay, yeah, well, you know, we'll give you this chance, and or we'll do this, or we have this restaurant you can do this in, or, but a lot of it in the beginning was not paid, like just truthfully, you know, and,
Right.
so that was hard. And again, like another thing I'm really passionate about and have become passionate about in this industry is like knowing our worth and assigning our value to ourselves and charging people for that. Cause that's it, like large installations are not cheap, as many of those watching know, you know,
Exactly.
It's expensive. And so then after the application, it was kind of so like that was, you know, learning was kind of the phase one, and like application was kind of the phase two. And I would say phase three was really like, okay, how do we keep this going? And that is where like Floral Marketing was born. It was like, okay, like I've done this thing, I've taken a bajillion photos of this thing, and now I need to talk about this thing. And I would say like the combination of those three things has truly been like my journey in learning. And then I would say like what's next is like, I just want to do all the things. Like I just want to do like, what do you want me to flower? I want to do it. I want to just be creative and kind of be that like yes woman, to just things that make me uncomfortable, right? Like, you know, in the summer it gets really busy here, and there's endless opportunities to find it. So more exterior installations always. I want this whole island and this whole country to be covered in flowers, but you know, maybe something, I made this, like, I'll talk about it later, but I made this like floral surfboard that I'm kind of obsessed with. And, you know,
love that
maybe
thing.
more, yeah, like something like that, or maybe, I don't know, maybe some surfboard maker out there wants to hire me to put flowers on surfboards. You know, sky's the limit, really, whatever anyone wants me to do.
I love it. I love it. Just say yes to whatever you're uncomfortable with.
Yeah, exactly.
Yes, I think we all need to do that more. That's for sure. So let's dive into the video a little bit. First of all, I love the video. I love how you showcase how you can work with other businesses as a revenue stream for floral business. And this is, you know, as I said a little bit, our first time, and this is another first time that we've had a video featuring an install at a restaurant, and that's part of the big part of the actual video. So can you share some other examples of when others would want to do installations similar to kind of what you showcased in the design video?
Yeah, well, I'll just speak to that personally. I think that now more than ever, you know, when our businesses shut down last year, I was like, crap, like, what do I do now?
Right.
And what ended up happening was, I ended up doing like $50 bouquets, like that I would truck around the island of Nantucket and deliver to people's homes. But in doing that, I was writing people's stories to each other, their joys, their sorrows, their, you know, their sympathies. And it really got me thinking like, gosh, like we're all sort of losing something, right? Like, yes, I lost an entire season of business, but you hear me okay?
I can hear you. Yeah.
Okay, cool. But somebody, you know, on the other side of that, but the business owners, they feel that way too. So it got me thinking like, maybe the conversation, instead of like, hey, let me build this really expensive floral installation in your restaurant after a year of COVID, maybe the conversation should, hey, we've had a hell year, you know, like we're going to hopefully have a busy season. And I would love to make something beautiful for you to showcase your business and your brand for when we do open up again. And I understand that things are tight, and I know that budgets are low, but like, let's talk about it. And I think even just a conversation like that with a business owner, you know, is for the most part well received. And I know that in doing the install at Lemon Press, like that to them was like the biggest thing. It's like, you know, we've really struggled. We've cut our seating by over half, and this was hell. So like, let's just make some pretty. Like, it was almost like yep, let's do it. Just make it beautiful. Like, let's figure it out.
Right.
So my experiences in doing, that was an interior semi-permanent installation. But, I recently did one outside of an art gallery here on the island. And that was an exterior silk floral installation. And again, it wasn't even supposed to be up for this long, but it's just up there because it just makes people happy. And I think that there's always, I haven't had any client that there hasn't been somewhat of a hesitation or a concern around the bottom line or the cost, which is so much of my education, because, it costs money to do what I do. But I can say, like, confidently that the end result has always been positive. It's always been like, okay, this is so worth it,
Yes.
And so, combination of like the installs, yes, but pop-ups, like I do a lot of pop-ups in brands like that have brick and mortar stores, or that are before, like, COVID, it was, we're having this event and we're doing like a flower crown bar, in honor of, whatever it was, or, like make your own bouquet bar, like something that's like interactive, that get people excited about a business or a brand. And I think that has been, generally very positive. And that's sort of the conversation that I have with businesses when I sort of go into it, is kind of what I just described.
Yeah, no, I love it. I love it. So if of all your past projects that you've had so far, which do you have a favorite or two?
I knew you were going to ask me this.
I know.
Okay. Well, the floral surfboard, that was just, the two things that really brought me back to life after my divorce were flowers and surfing. So that was up there. In fact, it's like my phone case, and like,
I love it.
My screensaver. Like, I had a hard time letting it go. I would say close second, or maybe a tie. I don't know. I did this audition piece for a TV show that, like, or I don't even really know how to describe it, but a floral series that aired last year. And they asked me to create something for my audition that would, like, describe me as a floral designer. And I was like, all right, well, I need to do something related to the ocean, because I'm just like a ocean child, and I want to do that. And so I was really inspired by this really famous ink block print called The Great Wave off Kanagawa. It's a Japanese ink block print. And so, again, really lucky to have a friend here that has a gallery who allowed me to build a 8-foot long by 6-foot tall floral wave that was inspired by that piece. And it took me 4 days. And it was like really cold. It was February. There was no heat in the gallery. And I just, I would go in, I would leave frozen, but I would listen to my music, and I would just think about what I was doing. And, the end result for me was just really powerful, because it really did feel like it was me. Like, I'm like, if I were me, I think this would be it as a flower thing, right? Like, this beautiful, is wild and crazy, and it was cool. So I would say probably those two things.
I love it. I love it. So when you're doing installs, how do you decide whether you're going to go dried versus fresh, or a combination of them?
Yeah, so it really just depends. If it's a business that's like, I want this to last, okay, well, you have two options. You either have silk florals, which have a really bad rep, and I'm really, like, passionate about that, but that's like a whole other spiel, and dried. All right? Like, those are the two options that you have for longevity. And then if it's just something that you want, like, gone in 3 days or 4 days, then we go fresh. What's the weather doing? Like, here, especially on an island 30 miles off the coast, we have to think about wind and rain and time of year. And so, that's sort of how I got into, like, the silk florals. I didn't mean to do that, but because I do both, but it ended up working that way solely because of where I live. If it were in California, I would use fresh all the time because they're not as expensive as silk flowers.
Right.
But how I decide is really, again, just the conversation with my client, like what's it for? Where's it going to be? How long do you want it to last? What's your budget? And those things are really what govern the decision for the piece.
Very good. I have a question that came in from Pistol and Bloom. They ask, any special tips for working with preserved product?
Any special tips for working with preserved product? Preserved dyed product bleeds, so wear gloves.
Yeah.
Asparagus fern will prick you many times over and over again. Pick items, preserved items that have movement, shape, and texture. So like in the lemon press installation, for example, you know, I had the sun palms and the palm spears, right? That were very fixed. You can't change much about those. You can do the angle but that's it. Like it is what it is.
Right.
But then next to the hanging amaranthus that's like really drippy and beautiful and has like flowy movement, it doesn't feel as like rigid. So my advice, I guess, speaking out loud, like kind of talking out loud, is to use a variety of shapes and textures, things that have movement, but things that are, you know, because we all love the palms, right? Like the dried palms, but sometimes they can feel really flat and sometimes they can feel really stiff. So, you know, even like mixing them in with these beautiful, like the delicate bougainvillea that Mayesh has, the dried preserved bougainvillea, you got like 4 or 5 little things on a stem, but they're just so cool. Like doing that with a preserved ruscus, like that, I would just say think outside of the box when it comes to, will that look good together? I don't know. I say go for it.
I love it. I love it. I'm just thinking out loud too. You're talking about all the different things. And if you guys aren't familiar with a lot of our preserved product, we actually have a preserved product guide.
Yeah.
There's so many, and
it really is. It's great.
Yeah, it can be a little bit overwhelming, and sometimes we can get some things and sometimes we can't get things because it just depends on supply and demand, just like everything else. And you know, so, but I will post a link to that while we're talking.
Yeah, that's a good point, because your library is, and one of the things I love is most of your products have photos. And as somebody that can't go to, we don't have a wholesaler or a flower market on the island, so I really rely on those images. So it's really nice.
Thank you. Yeah, I'll post a link for our flower library, and then like I have a guide too that people can like download and like, you know, have if they want to print it or just have it on their computer to show people. And it's, of course, it's beautiful because, you know, Allie on my team put it together and she's good at that stuff.
Yeah,
okay, so I have another question that came in from Debbie. Cool. She wanted to know what hooks you're using to secure it to the wall. And then in the video, I believe that you mentioned that the design was secured to the wall using screws. So just wondering if the screws were there, and if there aren't any in a wall that you want to like do something and, you know, you can't use screws, what are some other ways to kind of secure an installation to a wall? I think they're all good stuff.
That's a really great question. I can't stress this enough, especially when it comes to anything large that's hanging over somebody's head. Invest in either a GC or somebody like a mason or like a welder, somebody who knows to make sure a structure is firm or not going to see me drilling metal screws into 100-year-old brick. That is, the screws were not there for this installation. They were drilled into the brick by a masoner. Is that a masoner? Yeah, I think that's how you, I don't know.
Sure.
Somebody who knows what I'm doing. It's not me. And he did 4. He did 2 for the, you know, because it was two parts. For those of you who didn't see the video, there were two parts of the install. Up against the wall was one-sided. So, and then what I did with the chicken wire burrito was he gave me about 2 inches. So he used really long screws, and he gave me about 2 inches outside, so that I could zip tie the chicken wire burrito to the screw.
Okay.
And so it was a couple zip ties on both screws, and that is really all you needed for the dried preserve. Now, if it was wet floral foam or wet anything, water, anything like that, I would have asked him to do 4 because of the weight. But with this one, it was like, 1 and 1. And so when you put flowers in it, it naturally settles. Well, if you put flowers that have a lot of weight on 2 screws, what happens is it droops in the middle, right? So you want to make sure that there's a solid point or a solid fixture, solid something to anchor it all the way along, depending on how heavy your product is. And for this, it was dried and preserved, so it was light. If, for example, it was drywall, I would use nails, as long as the owner of wherever I was doing the installation allowed me to hammer into their wall. It would be an anchored screw or nails. Depending again on how heavy it is, I've used a various amount of command hooks in the past. So command hooks work really nicely for things like smilax, where you just kind of want that like ethereal, like moving sort of greenery vibe. I've put like several command hooks in different places against the wall to like hold the vine or the green. Would not recommend that for anything heavy, but that's another way to do a fixture on a wall. And then, what exists? Is there a, like on the exterior of buildings, they'll have wooden frames. And what I'll do is I'll take my staple gun and I'll staple gun the chicken wire burrito to the outside in several places. I mean, these holes are tiny, tiny, tiny. And again, like always get permission. Make sure you're not like just staple gunning things without someone's permission.
Right.
But that has always been tried and true for me with silks and also with fresh flowers and dried. So lots of different ways. And then again, like say there's something there naturally, like sometimes there'll be like a pole or a rod or a pipe that if it's safe, and again, always check, but I zip tie the chicken wire burritos right to that. And the nice thing about the chicken wire burritos is that they're malleable. So you can really bend and shape them as you need to, which is helpful with the placement of like nails and screws. But yeah, so lots of different ways to do it. I've learned over the last 3 years. I mean, those are the only ways that I've done it. I'm sure people have more, which I hope to learn, because that'd be great.
Yeah, those are all great tips and ideas. You mentioned earlier about how expensive installs are, and we always get the question, like, how much would something like this cost? Like, what would you charge a business for this dried install if you were doing it outside of Mayesh Design Star?
Yeah. So how I do this is I price it out per foot. So if I use 2 bunches of ruscus, 3 bunches of hanging amaranthus, and 4 dried sunchokes, which are like, $12 a stem at cost.
Right.
I add that up. I multiply it times, if you're doing a 40% markup or a 50% markup, right? Like multiply it times your markup, and then multiply that square foot times how many square feet your install is going to be. And I do it that way, and that does not include labor. I do it that way because, one, I found it's the easiest, most streamlined way to do it. I always tend to go a little heavy where I, at the end, will plug more in. So, and I don't account for that, right? As long as like, because that's something I like to give my clients or work with my clients wherever I can. But I think, again, like going back to what I said earlier, is that we have a responsibility in this industry not to short change ourselves and our craft, but also to educate our clients that on why things are expensive. Like especially this season, you know, demand is at an all-time high and we're paying more money, and then that's coming out of, you know, if that's coming out of our pockets essentially if we don't charge for it in the way that we're paying for it. So that's how I do large scale installs by the foot, and then I charge an hourly rate if I know, you know, depending on the client, and then I charge for a setup, and then if I have to go and break it down. Again, like flexible if the client is like, you know, hey, this is my total, like absolutely. And I think also it comes down to, as a designer, like what are you willing to compromise on? Like, is it going to be the job with like my dream, you know, one of my idols that asked me to do a floral? Probably. But what I always do, always, is I always invoice my client. I always send a thank you email with an invoice attached, even if they're not paying for it. And then what I do is I'll put like what everything cost, and then I'll comp or put like discount so that they can see it. So it's right there. So like, oh my gosh, Half worked for 5 hours and basically gave us her time for free. And that's just how much the product cost. And I found a lot of really good feedback from my clients in that respect. I haven't, you know, I generally, there'll be like a follow-up card or a thank, like something to say, hey, like I see that you did that, and that's time is valuable and you're valuable. So thank you, you know, here's a tip or here's a gift card or whatever. And I'm not saying you do that for something in return, but I'm saying do it because people don't know what they don't know.
Right. Yeah. I love that.
Yeah. So that's something I found that works really well, because then you're not like, oh, by the way, I gave you like $500 of labor for free. Just FYI.
Yeah, because people don't know, especially if they're asking for a sponsorship or a donation or something like that.
Yeah.
Especially when it comes to flowers, I feel like they really don't have any idea what they're really asking for.
Yeah.
I was actually just talking about this on the phone with someone, like, and especially when it's like someone else asking someone and then they're asking, I was like, well, have you had this conversation? Like what this really means to your business? And they're like, no, wait, that's a good idea. So I think that's important.
And I think it's something we all struggle with too. I would like to talk to one designer who doesn't struggle with this. 20 years in the industry, 2 years in the industry, I think it's very, very hard to convey your worth to somebody, especially when they're like, what? That costs how much? And you're like, like this is part of my frustration with the wedding industry is like Pinterest.
Yes.
Pinterest has like fundamentally ruined weddings for clients because they're like, I want this, but I only want to spend $1,000. And you're like, nah, it's not happening.
No. Yes, we talk about this all the time, and I get on my little soapbox once in a while. I just think that pricing needs to be more out there. Like I think when if you're blogging about a wedding that you did, like you can say this type of thing costs, like you don't have to be specific, but like that arch or that huppah that you wanted, that cost between, you know, $2,000 and $5,000, you know? So that way the $1,500 budget brides, they can like start seeing those kinds of things and understand. And even the higher budget brides, they can start seeing those kinds of things and understand. I just think we need to be more like out there with pricing. I don't know if everyone agrees with me or not, but I think it would help with those kinds of issues. 100%.
I agree with you for sure. And especially again, like going back to being, you know, somebody that had to learn for a lot of things that I probably shouldn't have paid for, you know, because I didn't know, or because I wanted the job but didn't know I was afraid. It's like, there's actually a lot of freedom in knowing your worth, and like, or knowing what your bottom line is, because then you'll just attract the clients that you want, and you'll very easily weed out, and I'm not saying like this for top tier clients. I'm saying it even for like the $1,000 events. Like $1,000 is a lot of money.
Right.
And even or $300, like once you know what your bottom line is and you're able to communicate that effectively and then add the why behind it, it's actually very easy to say, no, I'm sorry, that doesn't work for me and my bottom line. I'm happy to refer you, or I'm happy to, if I can, offer you other alternate suggestions. And I think that's partly why I don't get asked to do a lot of things sometimes, because like, I think that there's a general understanding that a recognition of like, hey, this is not a $300 installation,
Right.
upwards of $5,000 for some of them, lemon press included, right? Like that product was not cheap.
No, preserved product is not cheap.
Yeah. Yeah.
Not at all. Very good. Very good. Anyone else have any other questions? I'm getting down to our last couple. I have one from Amanda B. Floral. She wants to know, how did you market yourself to the companies that you work with?
Oh my gosh, Instagram. Yeah, that's the short answer. I had Instagram before I had a website. I wanted something visual, but when you don't have a portfolio to convey that yet, when you start out, you really are generally communicating an idea, a style, a vibe,
Right.
and hoping that your client either wants that or, identifies with it, and just pray that, it's enough. And, full transparency, it wasn't enough in the beginning. And I did have to build it out appropriately and develop my own aesthetic and identity. And that took me probably about a year. And it's very discouraging. And I love having this conversation. And I love, like, supporting small businesses in this way, because I remember like first starting out looking at Sue and Katie and Chrissy and just thinking like, holy crap, like, how do I do this? Like, it's so daunting, and their images are so beautiful and their work is so beautiful. And truthfully, once I stopped paying attention to that and just focused on the work, that's sort of how that happened. So how do I market myself to clients? Well, I think first and foremost, passion. Being really passionate about what I do helps to, through an aesthetic, which I developed on Instagram, but also now via a website, and also referrals. Referrals. If somebody likes what you do, they probably know someone else who's going to like it too. And then they tell their friends and they're like, oh, I want that floral cloud in my, eyebrow studio, or, whatever it is. And you're like, oh my gosh, yes. And they say, your vibe attracts your tribe. Like, that's so true. When I've done something for a client, that oftentimes it's a referral within like their circle, or they see it through their channel or something like that. And that's why social media, I think, is a blessing and a curse, because I don't know that I would have been so successful in marketing without it.
Right. Social media, definitely a blessing and a curse. We all experience that for sure. I was just thinking about like what you were saying, and kind of you're a little similar to one of my past guests, Francesca, the hotel florist, right? Yeah. And she talked about like, landing those hotel clients and like what she's done and what she suggests to do, and part of it is like approaching the businesses and things like that. So, and just tying it back to social media, I was wondering, and I was just thinking about this is the stuff that goes through my head. I was thinking about your surfboard and all of that, and how that's so amazing and very different than what is out there. So then I'm like, does it make sense? Like, if Hafsa like has this amazing surfboard and she wants to like get more clients to do more of that kind of work and the ocean type of stuff, like, to like reach out, whether it's like, if there's local businesses that you can reach out, like, I don't know if there's surfing companies or whatever, or like surfing magazines, or like you go on social media and you pick like a few people to DM like every week that like would like something like that. Like, hey, I did this. I think this would be great for your business. Have you ever done anything like that too?
Yeah, that's actually probably how I get like 75% of my jobs. Is the other is like, word of mouth and referrals, but really like market research and like, hey, I love your brand. I align with your brand. I identify with your brand. This is what I do. Let's have a discussion. And I think like, again, it really helps to like, let's talk about imposter syndrome, right? Like, again, it's important to recognize that like you can do those things even if you don't have a portfolio, because if you don't get what you don't ask for, should make that a bumper sticker and put it on everything I own, because I think like I'm not afraid to ask someone like, hey, do you want me to like flower your, surfboard or whatever? And so, yeah, absolutely. Like because, people ask me all the time, do you just work on Nantucket? Absolutely not. Like I travel anywhere anybody wants me to go. And that's like another beast is sourcing florals, abroad or here. And again, like that's been part of the challenge and the journey in COVID for me has been really like pivoting to what I saw Hafsa and Co being and to what it has become. And, I have to say, I'm not disappointed with having been on Nantucket for the majority of the last year and a half, because, it's a beautiful place and there's wonderful small business owners and it's a very small community. I always just envisioned it being bigger. I always envisioned it, being all over the place. And that really just stems from my love of travel. And I think that will come. But I think, again, it afforded me an opportunity to like really be thoughtful, create here. It's hard enough to get product here. We speak about this a lot. Like it's so hard and expensive, but, coming back to like how I find clients, that has to be part of it, because there's only so much business. There's plenty of business here, but there's only so much business I want to do here before I'm like, okay, where's next? And as things start to open up, I do hopefully see that, as an iteration of Hafsa and Co, hopefully.
Very exciting. So everyone that is listening, I'm going to also post Hafsa's Instagram and her website, so that way you can connect with her after the show and follow along with all the beautiful things that she's doing. And that's really the end of the show. Hafsa, do you have anything that you want to leave the show with and end?
Just gratitude. Thank you guys so much for having me, and anyone that's watching or does watch. Like, please, if you have a question or a follow-up question or anything, please don't hesitate to reach out. If I don't get back to you right away, I'm actually moving this week, but if I don't get back to you right away, I promise you I will, because it's important to me. It matters. I love connecting with people and helping in any way I can. So just thank you to Mayesh for having me, and it's been such a wild ride, and I'm thankful for all of it.
I love it. Shelly just chimed in. Shout out to Shelly. She's from our Mayesh Keto family. Thank you everyone that watched. Love it. Stay tuned, because Hafsa's video number 2 will be coming up very soon, next week, I think, right?
Wow.
June is next week, was just blowing my mind. I can't believe it. It's like crazy. And then we'll hop on to do another Mornings with Mayesh, dig into a little bit more flower marketing and answer any questions that you might have. So guys, if you have any questions, shoot me an email. You can respond to anything pretty much that goes out for Mayesh, or you can do our contact form or DM us, whatever it is. Comment on anything. We'll see it, and I'll add it to the show for next month. So exciting. So Thank you, Hafsa. You're amazing. Thank you for sharing everything that you did today. Just very inspiring. I love it. And I just love your energy. So this was great.
Thank you so much. I hope everyone has a great day. And I can't wait for the next phase. So thank you.
Yes, me too. Have a great day, everyone. Stay tuned for the next show, next dates. I'll be posting those soon, and keep on sending in your flow questions. Have a great day. Bye, everyone.